Why avoidance? Love you, then leave you. You've been there. The connection is electric. The chemistry is undeniable. They make you feel like you're the only person in the world. Then, boom, they pull away. You're left confused, questioning everything. Why do avoidance love so intensely and then leave just as fast? Here's the truth. It's not about you. It's about their programming. And if you don't recognize the pattern, you'll keep chasing love that disappears. So let's break it down. The thrill of the chase is one of the biggest reasons why avoidants seem to love so deeply in the beginning and then pull away just as quickly. When you first meet them, it feels like something out of a movie. They are present, attentive, and intensely focused on you. They send long, thoughtful messages, plan incredible dates, and make you feel like the most desirable person in the world. Their energy is magnetic, and you can't help but be drawn in. It's intoxicating. It feels like fate, but feels different from anything you've ever experienced before. This is where the high begins. The avoidant thrives in the early stages of a relationship because at this point, they are in pursuit mode. They love the adrenaline rush of new love. It's a chemical cocktail of dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin flooding their brain, making everything feel exciting and all-consuming. They idealize you, putting you on a pedestal, believing that you are the one person who will finally break through their walls and make them feel safe in love. But here's the truth. What they are experiencing isn't love. It's infatuation, fueled by the thrill of uncertainty. They don't even realize that it's not about you as a person. It's about the excitement of the unknown. You represent a new possibility, a fresh start, something untainted by their past fears and wounds. The chase is where they feel most alive because it allows them to escape their deeper fears of intimacy. In this stage, they are free to express affection without feeling trapped because in their mind, they still have the option to leave at any time. During this phase, you will notice how passionately they pursue you. They will send texts first thing in the morning and last thing at night. They will want to spend every possible moment with you. They might talk about the future early on, making you believe that they see you as the one. You'll feel like they are emotionally open, as if they are finally ready to let someone in. This overwhelming intensity makes it easy to believe that what you're experiencing is real love, but the truth is they are addicted to the chase, not the relationship itself. Once they feel they have caught you, something shifts. The intensity they once showed starts to fade. The texts become less frequent. The compliments slow down. The effort starts to feel inconsistent. This is where most people start to feel confused. You wonder what you did wrong. You replay your conversation, searching for the moment you might have said something to turn them off. But what you don't realize is that this change has nothing to do with you. And what's happening is that the avoidant is beginning to recognize that this relationship is becoming real. The high of the chase is wearing off, and now for the first time, they are facing the reality of emotional closeness. This is when their deepest fears start to surface. They are wired to associate intimacy with danger. Maybe they had a childhood where love was conditional, or they learned early on that closeness led to pain or rejection. Whatever the reason, their subconscious tells them that emotional connection equals vulnerability and vulnerability equals risk. At this stage, they might start to pick fights over small things. They may start to withdraw emotionally, creating distance without an explanation. You might notice them pulling away when you express your feelings or when you assume that things are progressing naturally. It's not because they don't care, it's because caring too much terrifies them. The moment the relationship starts to feel safe, their mind registers it as a threat. This is why avoidants cycle through relationships, falling in love hard and fast, only to disappear when things start to feel stable. It's not that they don't want love, it's that they fear what love represents. The initial thrill of the chase allows them to enjoy connection without confronting their deeper emotional wound. But once the honeymoon phase fades, they are left face to face with their biggest fear, true intimacy. So what happens next? They start to distance themselves. They suddenly become busy, the texts are shorter, the plans get canceled, the passion that once felt all-consuming now feels cold and distant. You feel the shift, but don't understand why it's happening. You ask if something's wrong, but they insist everything is fine. In reality, they are already mentally retreating. The same person who once told you that they had never felt this way before is now acting like they can take or leave the relationship. This is where many people make the mistake of chasing them, thinking that if they just show them more love, more patience, more understanding, they will come back. But the more you chase, the more they run. Why? Because now you represent commitment, expectation, and responsibility, things that threaten their illusion of control. What avoidants fail to realize is that the love they are looking for cannot exist in the chase. Real love is not about the adrenaline rush of the beginning. It's about what happens when the excitement fades. But because they are addicted to the pursuit, they keep repeating the same cycle, mistaking intensity for connection, and running the moment things start to feel real. An avoidant wants love just like anyone else. They crave connection, desire, affection, and deep down long for a relationship that feels fulfilling. But here's the paradox. The very thing they want is also the thing they fear the most. It's not that they don't care, it's that the moment things start to feel emotionally deep, their nervous system goes into overdrive. Suddenly, they aren't feeling excitement anymore. their feelings. Avoidants have a core belief that intimacy equals loss of control. This belief isn't something they consciously choose, something that was wired into them long ago. Maybe they grew up in a household where love was inconsistent, where affection was given and taken away unpredictably. Maybe they had parents who were emotionally unavailable, leaving them to fend for themselves when it came to handling their feelings. Or maybe they had a caregiver who was overbearing, smothering them with love but never allowing them to develop a sense of independence. Whatever the case, they learned early on that getting too close to someone comes with a cost. This is why avoidants are so drawn to the early stages of a relationship. In the beginning, they get to experience all the excitement of love without the risks. They get to enjoy the attention, the passion, and the connection while still maintaining a sense of emotional safety. But the moment things start to deepen, their mind starts sending warning signals. This is dangerous. You're losing control. Get out before you get hurt. At first, this fear of intimacy is subtle. Maybe they start taking longer to respond to messages. Maybe they suddenly need more space than they did before. They still like you, but something inside them is telling them to create distance. You might notice them pulling away after a deep conversation or withdrawing after an intimate moment. It feels confusing because they seemed so invested before, but now they are acting like they need to protect themselves from something. The truth is they aren't even aware of what's happening most of the time. They don't wake up one day and decide to pull away. It's not a calculated decision. It's an automatic response, a survival mechanism that kicks in when things start feeling too close for comfort. This is why you'll often hear avoidants say things like, "I just need space," or "I don't know why, but I feel overwhelmed." They aren't lying. They genuinely feel suffocated, even if nothing has changed in the relationship except for the growing emotional closeness. When an avoidant starts to feel real intimacy, their brain starts looking for an escape. Sometimes this means they start finding faults in their partner. They might begin fixating on small things that never bothered them before. Maybe they suddenly decide that they don't like the way you text, or that you're asking for too much, or that you aren't the person they thought you were. Other times they will self-sabotage. They might stop putting in effort, create unnecessary drama, or withdraw emotionally until you are the one who gets frustrated and leaves. This gives them the illusion that they aren't abandoning the relationship, it's just not working out. For someone on the receiving end, this behavior is incredibly painful. One moment they are fully engaged, making you feel like you're the best thing that ever happened to them. The next they are cold, distant, and acting as if the relationship is too much for them to handle. It doesn't make sense, and you start questioning everything. Did I do something wrong? Was I too needy? Did I push them away? But the truth is, this isn't about you. This is about their internal struggle with love and closeness. Avoidants often have an intense fear of being consumed by a relationship. They believe that getting too close to someone means losing themselves, losing their independence, and ultimately getting hurt. This fear is rooted in past experiences, whether they realize it or not. The more they start to care about someone, the more vulnerable they feel, and the more their subconscious mind tells them to run. But here's what most people don't understand. Avoidants don't necessarily want to leave. They don't want to lose the person they care about. What they want is to feel safe in love without feeling like they are being suffocated. Unfortunately, because they don't know how to regulate their fears, they resort to the only strategy they know, distancing themselves. In many cases, avoidants convince themselves that their fear is actually logic. Instead of recognizing that they are afraid of intimacy, they tell themselves that the relationship simply isn't right. They might say things like, "I just don't feel the same way anymore," or "I think I need to be alone right now." But underneath these words is a deeper truth. They are scared. Scared of needing someone. Scared of relying on another person. Scared of what happens when they let someone fully in. This is why avoidants tend to repeat the same cycle in relationships. They start off strong, fall hard and fast, but the moment things become too emotionally intimate, they retreat. Sometimes they leave the relationship entirely. Other times they stay but keep an emotional wall up, never fully letting their partner in. Either way, they never truly allow themselves to experience the depth of connection they claim to want. And the irony? Many avoidants end up feeling lonely because of this. They crave love, but don't know how to handle it once they have it. They chase relationships, but sabotage them before they get too deep. They long for connection, but fear what comes with it. And until they recognize this pattern and do the inner work, they will keep running, not from love itself, but from the fear of what love requires of them. The push-pull cycle of an avoidant is one of the most frustrating and emotionally draining experiences for anyone who finds themselves caught in it. At first, everything feels incredible. The connection is intense, and they seem deeply invested. They make you feel special, wanted, and chosen. Their attention is intoxicating, and their presence is electrifying. They might be the ones initiating everything, texting texting first, planning dates, showering you with affection, and making grand promises about the future. You start to believe that this time it's different. This time you found someone who truly wants to be with you. Then, almost like clockwork, they start to pull away. It's not always obvious at first. Maybe they take a little longer to reply to texts. Maybe they cancel a date last minute. Maybe they suddenly seem a little less enthusiastic. At first, you brush it off. Everyone gets busy, right? But then it happens again and again. The warm, engaged, passionate person who was all in just days or weeks ago now seems distant, uninterested, and emotionally unavailable. You feel the shift, but you don't understand why it's happening. Did you do something wrong? Did you say something that pushed them away? Your mind races, trying to pinpoint the exact moment things started to change. You start to overanalyze every interaction, searching for clues, but the more you try to get closer to them, the more they seem to retreat. This is the essence of the push-pull cycle. The avoidant moves toward you when they feel safe, when there's enough space for them to maintain their independence. But the moment they sense that the relationship is deepening, their subconscious alarms start ringing. Suddenly, closeness feels dangerous. They start to feel overwhelmed, suffocated, or trapped. Instead of leaning in, they pull back. It's not something they do consciously. It's an automatic reaction, wired into them from past experiences. When they pull away, you react. Maybe you reach out more, trying to understand what's wrong. Maybe you ask them if everything is okay, hoping to get reassurance. But instead of easing your concerns, they withdraw even further. The more you try to hold on, the more they feel the need to escape. Then, just when you start to give up, when you finally accept that they're gone or that they've lost interest, they come back. They show up again, just as charming, affectionate, and engaged as before. It's as if nothing happened. They might send a sweet message out of nowhere, reminiscing about a moment you shared. They might suggest meeting up, acting as if they never distanced themselves at all. And because you miss them, because you still have feelings, you let them back in. For a little while, things go back to how they were in the beginning. You feel relieved. You convince yourself that maybe they just needed space, that everything is fine now. But before long, the cycle repeats. They get close, then pull away. They make you feel secure, then leave you questioning everything. The highs are incredible, but the lows are devastating. This pattern keeps repeating because avoidants are constantly battling two conflicting desires: the need for connection and the fear of losing themselves in a relationship. They want love, but they also want control. When they feel you pulling away, they panic and come back, afraid of losing the connection. But when they get too close, they panic again and push you away. It's an endless loop, and unless they become aware of it and do the work to change, it never stops. The most confusing part is that they might not even understand why they do this. If you ask them why they pulled away, they might not have an answer. If you ask why they came back, they might just say, "I missed you." In their mind, their behavior makes sense because it's what they've always done. It's how they've learned to navigate relationships, by keeping one foot in and one foot out, never allowing themselves to be fully vulnerable. For the person on the receiving end, this cycle is emotionally exhausting. It keeps you in a state of anxiety, constantly wondering where you stand. One day you feel completely secure. The next, you feel like they're slipping away. Over time, this kind of instability takes a toll on your self-esteem. You start questioning yourself, wondering if you're too needy or too emotional. You may even blame yourself for their behavior, thinking that if you could just be more patient, more understanding, or less demanding, they wouldn't pull away. But the truth is, this isn't about you. It's not about anything you did or didn't do. It's about their internal conflict, their struggle with love, intimacy, and emotional safety. You could be the perfect partner and they would still engage in this push-pull dynamic because it has nothing to do with your worth and everything to do with their fears. Breaking free from this cycle requires a deep level of self-awareness from the avoidant. They have to recognize that their fear of intimacy is driving their behavior. They have to confront their past wounds, challenge their beliefs about love, and learn to tolerate emotional closeness without feeling like they're losing themselves. For you, the person caught in the cycle, the only way to protect yourself is to recognize the pattern and make a choice. You can keep riding the emotional roller coaster, hoping they'll eventually change, or you can step off and choose stability, security, and real emotional availability. Because love shouldn't be a game of push and pull. Real love doesn't leave you anxious, confused, or constantly chasing reassurance. Real love is steady, safe, and reciprocal. Avoidants don't just pull away randomly. They do it at the exact moment when things start to feel real, when the relationship shifts from excitement and fantasy to something deeper and more emotionally intimate. They begin to panic. It's almost as if the closer you get to them, the more distant they become. This isn't a coincidence. It's a deeply ingrained pattern driven by fear, even if they don't consciously realize it. In the beginning, they might be incredibly affectionate, open, and engaged. They may be the ones initiating deep conversations, expressing vulnerability, and making you feel like you finally found someone who truly understands you. You start to believe that this connection is different from anything you've experienced before. It feels safe, exciting, and full of possibility. But what you don't see is that for an avoidant, this initial stage is the safest part of the relationship. When a relationship is new, there is a built-in emotional distance. You're still getting to know each other, and there is an element of mystery. The avoidant can express love without feeling like they are risking anything. They can enjoy the rush of new romance while still maintaining a sense of emotional control. But as soon as things start to settle, when the relationship begins to shift from passion to deeper emotional intimacy, they start to feel uneasy. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, love is deeply conflicting. On one hand, they crave connection just like anyone else. They want to be loved, to be seen, to feel close to someone. But on the other hand, they have an unconscious belief that intimacy is dangerous. Maybe they grew up in an environment where love was unpredictable or conditional. Maybe they had a caregiver who was too overbearing or conversely too distant. Whatever the case, they learned that relationships come with risks. Risks of losing themselves, of being controlled, of being abandoned, or of being hurt. So what happens when they start to realize that the relationship is becoming serious? Their subconscious alarms go off. Their mind starts to look for ways to escape. They begin to feel suffocated even if nothing in the relationship has changed. This isn't because they don't care about you. It's because caring about you is triggering old fears they don't know how to handle. At this point, their behavior starts to shift. They might stop initiating contact as much. They might become less affectionate or seem less excited to see you. They may start canceling plans or becoming vague about the future. This change is often subtle at first, but over time, the distance grows. You might ask them what's wrong, and they may insist that nothing is wrong at all. They may say they're just stressed, tired, or going through something. But in reality, they are trying to create space so they can regain a sense of control. The hardest part about this phase is that it's incredibly confusing for the person on the receiving end. You remember how things were in the beginning, and you can't understand why they suddenly feel different. You might start blaming yourself, wondering if you did something to push them away. But the truth is, this isn't about you at all. This is about their internal battle with intimacy. Avoidants often don't realize that they are repeating a pattern. They convince themselves that their feelings are changing naturally, that they simply aren't as into the relationship as they thought. They might even start looking for flaws in you as a way to justify their withdrawal. They tell themselves things like, I don't think we're as compatible as I thought, or maybe I'm not ready for a relationship. But these aren't the real reasons they are pulling away. The real reason is that they are afraid of being vulnerable. This fear of vulnerability is why avoidants struggle with long-term relationships. The early stages of romance provide an illusion of intimacy without requiring deep emotional risk. But when love starts to feel stable and secure, their mind associates it with danger. Stability means expectation. Stability means responsibility. Stability means they have to truly let someone in, and that terrifies them. Many avoidants are not aware that they are self-sabotaging. They genuinely believe that something in the relationship is making them uncomfortable, when in reality it's the emotional closeness that is triggering their fears. They don't realize that the moment they start feeling deeply connected to someone, they instinctively pull back to protect themselves. This cycle can be incredibly painful for both the avoidant and their partner. The partner feels hurt, rejected, and confused, while the avoidant feels overwhelmed and trapped. The more their partner tries to reconnect, the more the avoidant distances themselves. The more the avoidant pulls away, the more the partner feels anxious and desperate for reassurance. This dynamic creates a push-pull effect that can be exhausting for both people involved. The key to breaking this pattern is awareness. Avoidants need to recognize that their fear of intimacy is driving their behavior, and they need to learn healthier ways to navigate emotional closeness. But for the person on the receiving end, the most important thing to understand is that this is not about their worth. It's not about whether they are lovable enough, attractive enough, or good enough. It's about the avoidant's internal struggles, and those struggles can't be solved by trying harder to make them stay. The reality is that love shouldn't feel like something you have to chase. It shouldn't feel like something that disappears the moment it becomes real. Real love deepens over time. It doesn't fade when things get serious. If someone pulls away the moment the relationship starts to become emotionally intimate, it's a sign that they have unresolved fears that they need to work through. Until they do that work, they will continue to repeat the same cycle, no matter how much they want love or how much they care about the person they are with. Avoidants don't leave because they stop caring. They leave because caring too much terrifies them. The deeper they fall for someone, the more vulnerable they feel. And for an avoidant, vulnerability is the biggest threat. It's not just uncomfortable, it feels unsafe. At first, everything seems perfect. They are present, engaged, and invested. They make you feel special, like you are the one they have been waiting for. You see glimpses of deep emotional connection, and it feels like they trust you. They share stories about their past, their dreams, their fears. You believe that this is real, that they are finally opening up to you in a way they don't with others. Then something shifts. Maybe it happens gradually, Or maybe it happens all at once, but suddenly they start to pull away. The warmth that once filled their voice now feels distant. The affectionate gestures start to disappear. They don't reach out as much. They don't make as much effort. And when you ask them what's wrong, they don't have a clear answer. They might say, I just need space, or I don't know what I want. The truth is, they are terrified of how much they feel for you. They are scared of needing you. They are afraid of what happens if they let themselves fully love you, because if they do, that means they are no longer in control. And for someone with an avoidant attachment style, losing control is the ultimate fear. Avoidants have spent most of their lives learning how to be self-sufficient. They have trained themselves to rely on no one but themselves. In many cases, this comes from childhood experiences where emotional closeness was either inconsistent, overwhelming, or even painful. Maybe they had parents who were emotionally distant, so they learned to suppress their needs. Maybe they had caregivers who were overly intrusive, making them feel suffocated. Or maybe they experienced rejection at a young age, teaching them that vulnerability leads to pain. Because of this, they built walls. These walls kept them safe. They learned that if they don't get too close, they can't get hurt. They convinced themselves that emotional independence was the only way to survive. But then they meet someone who changes everything. They meet someone who makes them feel something real. And for a moment, they let themselves believe that maybe this time love is safe. But the more they care, the more their old fears surface. Their mind starts warning them, what if this doesn't last? What if they hurt me? What if I lose myself in this relationship? These thoughts become overwhelming. They don't know how to sit with these fears, so they do the only thing they know how to do. They run. This is why avoidants often leave right when things are getting serious. The closer they get, the more their subconscious tells them they need to escape. It's not that they don't love you. It's that loving you makes them feel too exposed, too at risk. They would rather leave on their own terms than risk being hurt. In their mind, leaving gives them control. It allows them to protect themselves from the possibility of pain. The most painful part is that many avoidants don't actually want to leave. Deep down, they crave connection. They long for love just as much as anyone else. But the moment they feel truly attached to someone, their fear of losing that person becomes unbearable. Instead of waiting for you to leave them, they leave first. Instead of risking heartbreak, they create distance before it can happen. For the person on the receiving end, this is devastating. It feels like they went from loving you to abandoning you overnight. It feels personal, like you weren't enough to make them stay. You replay every moment, trying to figure out what changed. But the truth is, this isn't about you. This is about them protecting themselves from feelings they don't know how to handle. Sometimes avoidants convince themselves that leaving is logical. They tell themselves they lost feelings or that something feels off. They start to pick apart the relationship, focusing on small things that never bothered them before. They might even convince themselves that you aren't the right person for them, not realizing that what they are actually feeling is fear. Other times they leave in a way that keeps the door open. They don't cut you off completely, but they create enough distance to feel safe again. They might still check in, still send messages, still act like they care, because they do care, but they can't allow themselves to be too close. They keep you at arm's length, unsure of what they really want. This is why avoidants often regret leaving. When the initial fear fades, they start to miss you. They start to remember the good times, the connection, the comfort they felt with you. But by the time they realize it, the damage has already been done. You've been hurt. You've questioned your worth. You've had to pick up the pieces of something that didn't make sense. The cycle repeats until the avoidant decides to face their fears. Until they realize that love is not the enemy, that intimacy is not something to run from, that being vulnerable does not mean being weak. But until they do that inner work, they will keep running, not because they don't love, but because loving deeply feels like too much of a risk. Avoidants don't just disappear from relationships because they stop caring. In many cases, they leave because staying forces them to confront emotions they have spent their entire lives avoiding. The deeper the relationship gets, the more these emotions rise to the surface, and for an avoidant, this is unbearable. Instead of facing the discomfort, they run. But what happens after they leave? Do they truly move on, or do they secretly regret it? At first, they feel relief. The moment they create distance, they feel like they can breathe again. Their anxiety subsides, and they convince themselves that leaving was the right choice. They tell themselves that the relationship just wasn't working, that something felt off, or that they weren't ready for something serious. They don't see their own patterns. They believe the problem was external. They reassure themselves that they made the right decision, and for a little while they feel free. But then something shifts. After some time has passed, they start to miss you. At first it's subtle. Maybe they hear a song that reminds them of you, or Or they pass by a place where you shared a memory, they brush it off, thinking it's nothing. But then it happens again. They find themselves thinking about you more than they expected. They remember the warmth of your presence, the way you made them feel safe, the small things that made the relationship special. And suddenly, they don't feel so sure anymore. This is where the regret begins to creep in. At first, they try to suppress it. They distract themselves with work, hobbies, or even new relationships. They tell themselves that missing you is just a phase, that it will pass. But deep down, they start to realize something. They didn't leave because they didn't care. They left because they were scared. And now that they have distance, they can see it more clearly. For many avoidants, this realization comes too late. By the time they recognize what they lost, you've already begun to move on. You've processed the pain, picked yourself up, and started to heal. And when they reach out again, hoping to reconnect, they are met with a painful truth. They pushed away the very thing they wanted. The hardest part for an avoidant is understanding that their fear of intimacy is the reason they keep losing the people they love. But this realization doesn't come easily. It often takes repeated cycles of leaving, regretting, and then losing someone for good before they finally confront their own behavior. Until they do, they will continue running, not because they don't want love, but because love challenges everything they thought kept them safe. Love shouldn't feel like something you have to chase. It shouldn't feel like something that disappears the moment it becomes real. If someone loves you deeply but leaves the moment true intimacy begins, it's not about you, it's about them. It's about their fear of vulnerability, their battle with control, and their struggle with emotional closeness. Avoidants don't leave because they stop loving. They leave because loving you forces them to face emotions they aren't ready to confront. They crave connection just like anyone else, but the moment it starts to feel real, their mind tells them to run. They don't understand that their fear of intimacy is stronger than their desire for love. And until they recognize this pattern, they will keep repeating the same cycle, chasing connection, then fleeing the moment it becomes too deep. The truth is, you cannot make an avoidant stay. You cannot love them hard enough to fix their wounds. You cannot prove your worth in a way that erases their fears. The only person who can change this pattern is them. And until they do, no amount of effort, patience, or understanding will stop them from leaving when love starts to feel too close. But here's what you can do. You can choose yourself. You can recognize that real love doesn't run when things get deep. Real love leans in. Real love chooses to stay even when vulnerability feels uncomfortable. You deserve a love that isn't afraid of intimacy, a love that doesn't retreat the moment it feels real. If someone pulls away when you give them your heart, that is not a reflection of your worth. That is a reflection of their fears. And no matter how much they may love you, unless they confront those fears, they will always leave when love becomes real. Thank you for being here today, for listening, for opening your heart to this message, whether you've experienced this pattern in your own relationships or you're trying to understand someone who has. I hope this has given you clarity and strength. You are worthy of deep, lasting love. You are worthy of someone who stays, and most importantly, you are worthy of a love that doesn't make you question whether or not you are enough. Thank you for your time, your energy, and your willingness to grow. Keep choosing yourself, and keep choosing love that chooses you back.